Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I will be reading stories, and not just any stories, scary stories. Let me see what I have here. Here we are. Yes, this should be a good story to tell. The name of this lovely story: The Girl Who Stood on a Grave. Some boys and girls were at a party one night. There was a graveyard down the street, and they were talking about how scary it was. "Don't ever stand on a grave after dark," one of the boys said. "The person inside will grab you. He'll pull you under." "That's not true," one of the girls said. "It's just a superstition." "I'll give you $1 if you stand on the grave," the boy said. "A grave doesn't scare me," said the girl. "I'll do it right now." The boy handed her his knife. "Stick this knife in one of the graves," he said. "Then we'll know you've been there." The graveyard was filled with shadows and was as quiet as death. "There is nothing to be scared of," the girl told herself, but she was scared anyway. She picked out a grave and stood on it. Then quickly she bent over and plunged the knife into the soil, and she started to leave, but she couldn't get away. Something was holding her back. She tried a second time to leave, but she couldn't move. She was filled with terror. "Something has got me," she screamed, and she fell to the ground. When she didn't come back, the others went to look for her. They found her body sprawled across the grave. Without realizing it, she had plunged her knife down into her skirt and had pinned it to the ground. It was only the knife that held her. She had died of fright. Spooky enough for you? It's not? Let me find another one then for you. I'll go through a different one of the books. Oh, here we are. This scary story is entitled One Sunday Morning. Ida always went to the 7 o'clock Sunday morning service at her church. Usually she heard the clanging of the church bells while she was eating breakfast, but this morning she heard it while she was still in bed. "That means I'm late," she thought. Ida jumped out of bed, quickly dressed, and left without eating or looking at the clock. It was still dark outside, but it usually was dark at this time of year. Ida was the only one on the street. The only sounds she heard were the clatter of her shoes on the pavement. Everybody must be in church, she thought. Then she quietly stepped into the church and found a seat. The service had begun already. When she caught her breath, Ida looked around. The church was filled with people she had never seen before, but the woman next to her did look familiar. Ida smiled at her. "It's Joseph Kerr," she thought. "But she's dead. She died a month ago." Suddenly, Ida felt uneasy. She looked around again. As her eyes began to adjust to the dim light, Ida saw some skeletons in suits and dresses. This service is for the dead," Ida thought. "Everybody here is dead except me." Ida noticed that some of them were staring at her. They looked angry, as if she had no business there. Joseph Kerr leaned toward her and whispered, "Leave right after the benediction, if you can care for your life." When the service came to an end, the minister gave his blessing. "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you." Ida grabbed her coat and walked quickly toward the door. When she heard footsteps behind her, she glanced back. Several of the dead were coming toward her. Others were getting up to join them. "The Lord lift up his countenance to you," the minister went on. Ida was so frightened she began to run out the door, and she ran, with a pack of shrieking ghosts at her heels. "Get out!" one of them screamed. Another shouted, "You don't belong here!" and ripped her coat away. As Ida ran through the cemetery, a third grabbed her hat from her head. "Don't come back!" it screamed, and shook his arm at her. By the time Ida reached the street, the sun was rising and the dead had disappeared. Did this really happen? Ida asked herself. Or have I been dreaming? That afternoon, one of Ida's friends brought over her coat and hat, or what was left of them. They had been found in the cemetery, torn to shreds. Thank you for listening. That's all the scary stories I have for tonight.